When I was a kid, my family had a tzedakah collective. My parents would gather the solicitations that came in the mail from various organizations, and twice a year we would sit around the table and my father would read aloud to my brothers and me a bit about each organization and the issue it addressed. We would then debate the various causes, and my brothers and I would allot money from our stacks of dollar bills that we each had. And every year it went down the same way. I gave my money to social justice organizations of the 70s, the ACLU, the NAACP, and the Southern Poverty Law Center. My brother Tony gave his money to environmental causes, the Sierra Club and Greenpeace. And Seth, being the youngest, got whatever was left. And a family narrative emerged. Jennie cared about people and civil rights. Tony cared about animals and the earth. And this trend continued. Through junior high, high school, and college, I worked on social justice issues and then became a rabbi, seeking to mobilize the American Jewish community to address issues of social, economic, and racial justice, and to make social justice core to the fabric of American Jewish life. Hunger, poverty, racial justice, refugees, these were the kinds of issues that compelled me. Until just a few years ago, I understood the environment to be something out there, land, earth, animals, maybe air. I knew intellectually that it was important. I had a vague sense of impending climate change, but I didn't fully really get that the entire future of humanity was at stake. And although I'm a bit embarrassed to admit this, it feels important because I think there are many people like me, including many social justice activists, who have woken up late to how dire the climate crisis is, and to the fact that it is profoundly a social, economic, and racial justice issue. The climate crisis is the existential crisis of our time. We know the science, we read the staggering predictions of sea level rise, we feel the heat, we witness the floods, fires, and hurricanes wreaking havoc across our nation and the globe, and we know that without very significant changes, we are hurtling towards an unlivable and unsustainable future. Many are already experiencing the painful impacts of climate change. We have known our world was broken even before the coronavirus pandemic. We knew that we couldn't just continue as we had been and expect our children and grandchildren would have a safe planet to live on. But the deep disruption caused by the coronavirus has put these truths into even sharper focus, and we have experienced on a profound level our interconnectedness. We have a new knowledge of what disruption feels like, of what happens when government fails to prepare and respond adequately. We are experiencing what not listening to science leads to. The pandemic has awakened even the most comfortable among us to the fragility of our systems, our food, health, education, energy, and transportation systems. Many are getting in their kishkas in a new way the threat of climate collapse. But this time of disruption and destruction has also given us a new opportunity. We have an unexpected opportunity to re-envision and rebuild the world. Not to bolster the same unjust economies and polluting infrastructure, but to dream big, to envision and bring to life something profoundly different. And this time is not only being shaped by pandemic. The uprisings for Black lives have put into sharper relief for many the systemic racism that pulses through our nation. It has heightened our awareness of the insidiousness of white supremacy and how Black, brown, and Indigenous people bear the weight of injustice. Indeed, the impacts of the climate crisis rest disproportionately on those who have been historically marginalized. People living in the global South, in poverty, in particularly vulnerable areas, and people who experience racism and other kinds of bigotry. The climate crisis in many ways is a force multiplier, exacerbating historical inequities even as it impacts everyone. Justice and equity are essential to confronting the climate crisis, and like coronavirus, none of us, regardless of wealth or skin color, is safe from the impacts. The climate crisis does not affect us all equally, but no one will be exempt. We are really living in a devastating time. And as Jews, we have faced existential crises, disruption, and destruction many times throughout history. And each time, we have not only survived, but envisioned and rebuilt a different future. Each time we have had to create a very new kind of existence. We recently observed Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av. It's the major day of communal grieving in the Jewish calendar, the day on which we mourn many tragedies and expulsions faced by the Jewish people. And most specifically, Tisha B'Av commemorates the destruction of the ancient temple in Jerusalem. I'll be honest, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the ancient temple, and I have yet to meet a Jew whose favorite holiday is Tisha B'Av. However, the story of the ancient temple is one of radical transformation. The destruction of the temple meant the end of the sacrificial system and the birth of rabbinic Judaism, and it's actually an incredibly powerful example of a complete paradigmatic and societal transformation, a shift from sacrificial offerings on the temple's altar to a practice of deeds and prayer, the Judaism we know today. What comes after the temple is a story of rebuilding not the same structures, but ones that transformed Jewish civilization into a new era. We can think of many other times throughout history when there's been profound reinvention. And right now, we are in such a time. And in such times, we need bold, not incremental action. Right now, we need responses and solutions at the scale that science and justice demand. And none of us can sit this out. We need a powerful Jewish climate movement that is spiritually rooted, multi-generational, bold, and centers justice. Some people may ask, why should we do this as Jews? And there are many answers to this question. For starters, there are so many Jewish values that call us to rise to the challenge of the climate crisis. Dor ledor, life continuing generation to generation. Shomrei Adama, protecting the earth. Bacharta b'chaim, choosing life. Bal tashchit, do not destroy. Tirdof tzedek, pursue justice. And Shomer ger yatom va'almana, protecting the vulnerable. And these are just a few of them. I'm sure you can think of many others. Second, there is a diverse movement of people fighting for climate justice, including faith groups, Black, Brown, Indigenous communities, young people. At this time, when we need all hands on deck, every part of the diverse American community must fully show up, including the Jewish community. While we are only 2% of the population, the Jewish community has a strong voice in American society and politics. And furthermore, religious voices in general play an important role in shaping our national narratives and solutions. We need to ensure the centrality of values like human dignity, social justice, and the public good. And there is power in spiritually rooted activism. We bring Jewish history and experience, teachings and traditions, and faith and song to the movement. Finally, people are grappling with this on an existential level, and we need to be supporting them Jewishly to live with greater integrity and wholeness, attending to the spiritual issues raised by the crisis. Studies indicate that 80% of American Jews are very concerned or somewhat concerned about the climate crisis, but most are not taking action. I think there are two main reasons for this. One, people are not sure what they can do to make a difference in the face of such an overwhelming crisis. And two, it's difficult to face the truth of what is at stake, to face the fact that without massive change, we are hurtling towards a world in which much of the earth will become uninhabitable. There will not be enough food to eat, or clean air to breathe, or water to drink, and many major cities will be underwater. It's too much to take in, so we disassociate, or we turn away, or we distract ourselves. How can our souls and psyches bear such a painful possibility? We need to build a spiritually rooted Jewish climate movement that supports us to face the truth in community, to make space to grieve and to feel rather than push away the anxiety, and to develop practices to support us to move through it. And part of how we live in the face of this painful truth is by taking meaningful action together with others. We need to build a Jewish climate movement that gives people pathways to take meaningful action. In order to mitigate the most devastating impacts of climate change and to avert total climate collapse, this must be action on a systemic level. Because while personal practices like reducing meat consumption and communal practices like greening institutions are important, even if every single person and every Jewish institution significantly lowered their carbon footprint, we still would not avoid the most catastrophic impacts of climate change. In the middle of April, when more than half of the world was homebound due to coronavirus, carbon dioxide emissions only fell around 17%. The other 83% of emissions are embedded deeply into our economy. And to address that, we need to make change on a systemic level. So what does that mean? It means things like cutting demand for fossil fuel energy. And the good news is that the technology to rapidly shift from fossil fuel to clean energy is here. We just need the political will to do so. And the flip side, we need to cut supply for fossil fuels, keeping coal, oil, and gas underground where they belong. And we need to create a just transition, create millions of living wage clean energy jobs, and ensure a just transition for workers in the fossil fuel industry. And we can do this. We can do this by advocating for comprehensive climate policy at the federal and state levels, policies that keep equity and justice at the fore, and that move us towards net zero greenhouse gas emissions and ensure that the climate impacts that are unavoidable don't fall disproportionately on Black, Brown, Indigenous, and low-income populations. We can do this by moving money. We need to leverage the power of institutional investors and pressure banks and other agencies that are currently financing the fossil fuel industry. We need to build a movement. And finally, we need to change the political landscape. Elections have consequences. We must vote with climate at the front of our minds and call on candidates to make bold action on climate a top priority. The American Jewish community has a significant role to play in bringing these changes about. And we need to bring our full power and people of the Jewish community to join together with other communities to forge from this dark place a new kind of world, one that is more just and sustainable. The story at the core of the Jewish people's narrative is a story out of Mitzrayim, Egypt, or literally a narrow place, a place of oppression and genocide like so many peoples have faced. While wandering in the desert, God reminds us that the path forward and our redemption is not in the heavens or beyond our reach. Lo b'shamayim hi. Our redemption is in our hands. In Deuteronomy, God says, it is not too baffling for you or beyond your reach. It is not in the heavens or beyond the sea. No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it. The future of the world is in our hands. B'yadenu, it's in our hands as in it's on us, it's up to us, and also it's in our hands. We have the capacity, we have the science, we have the resources, we have the people, and we have the power. We have the opportunity to close the gap between the world as it is and the world as it should be. Not by inching the two closer together incrementally, but by reimagining and rebuilding a different future. We must join with other communities to confront the existential crisis of our time. Lo b'shamayim hi, it is not beyond us in heaven. It is in our hands and in our hearts, and we can do it. Now is the time to join together in this urgent and sacred work. Nothing less than the future of humanity is at stake. Dayenu is a new Jewish organization mobilizing the American Jewish community to confront the climate crisis with spiritual audacity and bold political action. Go to www.dayenu.org to learn more about how you can take meaningful action today and be part of the growing Jewish climate movement. Find out how you can start a Dayenu circle with friends, engage in powerful national campaigns, call on our leaders and candidates for office to take bold climate action that centers justice and equity, and join together with other communities to work for a more just and sustainable world. Dayenu, we've had enough. Dayenu also means we have enough. We have what we need to confront the climate crisis so that all people can have enough. Join us.